Yudalad Mishnah Aleph. This Mishnah continues the theme of the previous parak and discusses the melacha of tzeda, of trapping an animal, and will also discuss the prohibition of chovel, of wounding an animal. Says the Mishnah, Shmoine shirotzim ha'amurim b'Torah, the 8 shirotzim that are mentioned in the Torah, hatzadon, if someone traps them, v'hachovel bohen, or someone causes an injury to them, he bruises them, chayav. Then is chayav. Now, these shmoine shirotzim, they're set out in Parshas Shmini, in Vayikra Perek Yud Aleph, Psukim 29 and 30. And the identification of the shirotzim is not absolutely clear, but the Art Scroll Mishnahist translates them as follows. Hachoyled, the weasel, ha'achba is the mouse, hatzov is a toad or a turtle, ha'anaka is a hedgehog, ha'koyach is the chameleon, haltar the lizard, hachoymet the snail, hatinshomes and the mole. Those are the shmoina shirotzim. And if a person does seder for these animals, then he is chayav. The Bartanura says because sheyesh b'minon notzut. It's an important qualification in the halacha of tzeda. You're only chayav tzeda min haTorah if the animal that you trap is of a species which is normally trapped. B'minon notzut. And these 8 shirotzim, they're normally trapped, and therefore hatzodon is chayav. And this point has very important bearing regarding the halachas of trapping bees and other animals on Shabbos, because one of the factors in the halachic process, as it were, is whether or not the animal that a person is trapping is b'minoi notzud, is a species that is normally trapped. Because if it's not, that reduces the issa to a drabonon, and then in certain situations, b'mokum tsar, etc., lo goz rabbonon, but that's beyond the remit of the shir, but that's an important factor. Now, hachovel bohen is chayav. If you bruise them or you injure them, these 8 shirotzim, then you are chayav. Now, the interesting feature of these animals is they all diyesh lohen says the Bartanura. They all have a thick skin, v'havi lo chabura she'enu chizeres, and therefore you're causing some sort of permanent injury. Now, what exactly is the prohibition of chovel? Which melacha does it come under? So there is a 3-way machlokus in the Rishonim as to what is the prohibition of chovel. The Bartanura brings 2, and there is a 3rd. The first reason that the Bartanura brings is that of the Rambam, and that is chayiv mishum mefarik shehi tolda de dosh. The problem is that of dosh, just like with mefarik, which is a tolda of dosh, you're separating the grains from the chaff. So to over here, you're separating the blood from the actual flesh. That's the reason of chovel according to the Rambam. The second reason brought here by the Bartanura is the reason brought by Rashi, Inami. Since the animal, this one of these 8 shirotzim, has skin, the blood sort of collects underneath the skin. And the chiv is therefore tzoveh, your colouring. And therefore the problem is soveya. That is the reason the Rashi gives. There is a 3rd reason which is brought by Rashi as well, but also it's known as Tosfos' shitta. And Tosfos says the problem is netilas neshama. That, as it were, you're sort of you're taking away a part of the life of this animal. That when you do a ma'aseh chavala, the blood flows from the wounded area, and it's as if you've sort of taken a bit of the life away from that area. And that is the reason in Netilas Neshama. That's the reason given by Tosfos, and that's a tolda of shochet, of the melacha of shechting of shochet on Shabbos. So you've got 3 reasons. Now, what are the nafkaminas between these reasons? Well, the Bir Halacha in Siman Shin Tes Zayin Sivkoten Ches discusses this in detail, but there's some very interesting practical nafkaminas between these 3 reasons. If the reason is the first reason, i.e. the problem is that of dosh, which is the shitta of the Rambam, then, number 1, you're only going to be chayav min haTorah if you needed the blood for some sort of use. Alternatively, you need to be chayav min haTorah, you have got to have taken out a sufficient quantity of dam, i.e. the shir of a grogeres, a fig's amount of dam. That's the chiyuv for dosh. If the problem is that of dosh, that's the chiyuv of chovel. According to the svara of Rashi, that the problem is that of sover. So again, you're only going to be chayav if you dyed enough skin that you're normally going to be chayiv for that of tzovea. And the third reason, according to the reason of Tosfos and Tilas Neshama, then again you're only going to be chayiv if there was a need there was some sort of constructive purpose for your chavola. For example, you're hitting the animal or the living creature, whatever it is, for a constructive purpose, for example, for medical reasons. But were it not for that, then you're going to be potter. So there's some interesting nafkaminas between the various reasons given by the Rishonim as to what the issa of chovel is. Okay, continues the Mishnah. Usha shkotzim, other shkotzim, v'remosim, other creepy crawlers, vermin, whatever you want to call it, hachovel bohen is potter. If you do chavola on them, you're potter. Why? Because other shkotzim, v'remosim, they have much thinner skin, and therefore the damage done is different. And therefore, according to the various reasons, there's no concern. For example, according to the reason of the Rambam, the problem of chovel is dosh. That's because you have taken away the blood from the flesh. But if it's got a very thin skin, you haven't permanently removed the dam. It can be reabsorbed very easily back into the animal itself. For example, if the problem is tzoveya, or the problem is the tilas neshama, Rashi and Tosfos' reason, then again, if it's shash shkotzim v'remosim, where there's a very thin skin, again your hachovel bun is potter, because it's not considered a permanent type of colouring. The tzoveh is very temporary. Imagine you sort of just slap another person on the face. There's a sort of a momentary redness, but then it goes straight away. That's not considered proper tzoveh. And similarly, the netilas neshama, it's not really called the netilas neshama. It's not considered a shochet if it's very temporary. So therefore, hachovel bun is potter. However, hatzodon l'tzorech chayev, shelo l'tzorech is potter. But if you were to trap these animals, these shkotzim v'remosim, then it depends. If you trap them l'tzorech, you're chayev, shelo l'tzorech is potter. Because these animals are generally not normally trapped. And therefore, in order to be chayev for tzeda, you've got to be tzod them, you've got to trap them, is l'tzorech. For example, you trap them, you need them for some medical reason, you need the animals or whatever for a medical reason or for a constructive purpose, then l'tzorech you're chayev, shelo l'tzorech you are potter. Fine. Continues and concludes the Mishnah. Chayo va'of shebirshusho hatzodon potter v'hachova ben chayev. A chayo, an animal, a beast, va'of, or a bird, shebirshusho, which is already in your rishus, hatzodon is potter. If you trap them, they're potter. Why? As the Bartanura explains, shaharin tzoidim va'amudim hein, va'imdim hein, because these animals are already trapped. They're in your rishus, and once they're trapped, you can't do the malacha again. So therefore, hatzodon, you're potter. However, v'hachovel bohen is chayev. Why? Says the Bartanura, t'yesh lahen or, because the whole difference between the shmoyne shirotzim and the other animals is the thickness of the skin. And since the birds and the chay and the oif, they have a thicker skin, therefore it's possible to do chovel on them. That's why the Mishnah, the Bartanura says, the yesh lahen or. That concludes the Mishnah, the Bartanura, with an interesting observation. Ve'ein hachovel chayev b'chol hani, and you're not going to be chayev chovel in all of these cases, the tanin and masnisin, in that we mentioned, listed so far in the Mishnah, ella b'tzorech ledam, unless there is a need for the dam which you're trying to get out. Avalim lo chovel ella hazik, but if you're not doing it for the blood, but you're just causing some sort of destruction, you're just wounding the animal, hakaiman on kol ha'mekalklin p'turim. We know that any malacha done in a derech kilkul, in a destructive fashion, you're potter. So that's an important qualification at the end of the Bartanura and our Mishnah. That is the end of Perek Yudalad Mishnah Aleph.